The relationship of wind to human beings is complex and freighted with mythology. Myths about the origins of things abound among peoples throughout the world. My favorite myth is the Greek story of Odysseus, Homer's hero and wanderer of the Aegean seas. On one of his sailing adventures, Odysseus received from the god Aeolus, keeper of the winds, a wineskin containing contrary winds. Aeolus warned Odysseus not to untie the wineskin, but of course his curious crewmates did so. An enraged Aeolus stilled the wind, forcing Odysseus and his crew to row their ship on calm seas for 6 days. No breeze, no help in sight, by our own folly, 6 indistinguishable nights and days, lamented Odysseus. This story of Odysseus and Aeolus reminds us that the historic importance of the wind is linked to exploration. Sail power was the only method to negotiate vast stretches of the globe's oceans and seas. For thousands of years, human discovery, conquest, and trade all relied on sailing ships. From ancient times to the middle of the 19th century, the bubbling wakes and billowing sails of thousands of ships tell the story of commerce and conquest. With the exception of oared boats, rarely used for long voyages, there was no other power source available. For better or worse, trade, migration, and the exploration and conquest of the world were all dependent on a human partnership with the wind.
So everybody, welcome back to the Environmental Podcast. This week's topic is wind energy.
As I alluded to, that precious quote from this book called Windfall, Wind Energy in America Today by Robert Reiter, who's a cool wind historian, I guess you would say.
Yeah, his work was pretty interesting based on the things you've shared with me.
Yeah, I've been reading that to try and prepare for this episode because I don't know too much about wind power. I'll say I don't know too much about wind historically, culturally.
The opposition to it, the evolution of it, maybe.
Yeah. I know a little bit about science because I took a pretty in-depth energy class.
Yeah, so you know how it works.
Last year. Yeah.
How it turns wind into
vaguely. Don't ask me any
electricity.
questions, but I kind of know.
Okay, when we get to it, you can give the background on that.
Sure.
But let's kind of start off by saying why did we pick wind as our first explicitly scientific episode of the Environmental Podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're just trying to live up to the podcast name and actually come up with an environmental talk for once. And we both know that energy and specifically transitioning away from fossil fuels and towards renewables is really
the key to solving a lot of the world's, or stopping the climate change.
Yeah, the climate change, as they say. No, but that is several magnitudes bigger than pretty much every other environmental problem. Deforestation,
ocean
extinction,
acidification,
pollution, all these things.
They're
all big deals.
Yes.
But this is like the big one, which is fossil fuels causing climate change, or greenhouse gases causing climate change, which a lot of which comes from fossil fuels, which we use to produce energy and electricity.
Yes, exactly. And we were going through like, well, what are we going to pick? Energy, but then which one? Wind, because we love wind.
Yeah.
Big wind guys.
Big wind people. We just, those kind of inspiring paragons of progress, which is a row of wind turbines on the horizon. I love that. I love to see it. I think that should be on our currency.
That's not a bad idea.
It's probably on the Dutch currency.
Probably, but they've had windmills for much longer than us.
Yeah, so we're not ultra scientific people, but we're going to give a basic overview of the science, of the history of wind energy, some more science, and we'll also talk about maybe the current state of wind compared to other energy sources today and our future hopes for it.
Yeah,
so
sounds good.
Let's just get straight into it.
Let's jump right into it, man. So, Aaron, what's a wind turbine? How does that work?
Well, I have a little diagram here. I'm just going to outline it. So
you're going to show it to the audience?
Yeah, I'll paint it with words. There's a big kind of metallic trunk, like a stand, a big tall pole. And do you know what that's called?
The trunk?
No, it's called, that would be a tree. It's called the tower.
Oh, okay.
On top of the tower are 3 kind of sharp, very sleekly shaped protrusions, and they spin with the wind. Do you know what those are called?
Blades.
Those are called blades.
Yes.
And you know what the middle thing that kind of holds the blades and extends behind it is called?
I guess it would be like the turbine or the engine.
No, that's called the nacelle.
The nacelle.
And on the bigger turbines, those are big enough for a crew of people to go in to work the machinery and all those things, because the nacelle holds the rotor, the gearbox, and the generator.
Okay, so what converts the wind energy into electricity?
Yeah, essentially. So wind pushes the blades. The blades kind of rotate, and they rotate the rotor along with it. So
Mhm.
that's called the rotor because it rotates.
Hmm.
And that turns the generator, and the generator converts the kinetic energy or the movement kind of energy into electrical. And it does this by the basic principle is whenever you have a piece of wire and run a magnet along it,
Mhm.
electrons are pushed down the wire and an electric current is generated.
Cool.
So this is the basic effect which is being achieved from the rotation of the rotor into the generator.
Yeah, and in the generator there's a bunch of gears and things which like make the wind energy even more powerful and like move the battery.
Yes.
Cool.
And from that point, a transformer converts the electricity into the correct voltage for whatever local grid it's being supplying.
Okay.
And then the electricity is sent to the grid, and we can use it for our various needs.
Okay. But wind doesn't blow 24/7, so what do they do about that?
I think that's where batteries come into it, so energy can be stored
Yeah.
and then used later on.
Yeah, so it's called a regulator. I don't know why I asked you. I knew this.
Okay. Yeah, you put me on the spot.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
a regulator, which has been around for like 100+ years, and it basically stores when the windmill is producing excess energy during the windy times. When it's producing more energy than the grid needs, it stores it, and then when it's not blowing, it releases the energy.
Neat.
So batteries are a really big part of a lot of renewables because they're not, they aren't consistent, and that is called variation or like intermittency.
Okay.
And that happens with pretty much any renewable.
Oh, intermittency as in wind is intermittently blowing?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
Yeah, I knew that before I even started looking into this episode, was that the biggest, or most of the biggest technological advancements to come in the renewable space is in batteries, right?
Yeah, because a lot of places they have more windmill capacity than they have to like actually, so like the windmills
hold
are,
it.
yeah, so
To
it's
hold
just
the
like
energy, yeah.
losing the energy, which is fine if we're losing wind energy because it's just wind, but it's more important to have high capture rates when it's something that pollutes, because we don't want to be burning coal and then just like letting it go. So
Yeah, for
efficiency
sure.
in that realm is really important, and it's really important in wind as well, but we need advancements in order to make it even more efficient than it already is.
Good stuff. So that is the current state of a wind turbine.
Yes.
How did we get here?
Well, wind energy has been man's like best friend. This was the first time.
Before dogs.
Yeah, wind, because it's the first element, non-human power that humans captured to assist them. Pretty much.
For what?
For like sailing.
Of course. Odysseus.
So 2000 AD was like the first.
BC.
I always mix those up.
I was mix those guys up.
Last week I said it. I said like 350 BC, but it was actually
on the episode?
AC. Yeah.
Yikes.
So hopefully people will put that together.
But yeah, so we were looking into the history of wind power, and it predates any kind of fossils because sails and things like that don't really preserve very well.
Yeah.
But we guess that we've been using it for a very, very long time, thousands of years. Supposedly, because I was looking into the first kind of terrestrial or land-based use of wind, which wasn't for sailing, supposedly the hero of Alexandria, who was a Greek naturalist, constructed a small windmill that provided power so that he could to play an organ.
Oh.
So musical power.
That's really interesting. I would have assumed it was for like pushing something. I don't know.
No, just to push his song.
It's organ. Cool.
But the first, so that's a supposedly.
Okay.
Probably some kind of legend. The first evidence that we have of us using terrestrial wind power was in the 10th century when Persians were using kind of sails made of reeds, and they were using wind to help them grind corn and also to raise water for irrigation.
Okay.
This technology spread through the Middle East, and it spread through India and China. And then I have in England in 1137, so pretty shortly after, a couple hundred years, the post mill was invented and designed, and it was very obviously inspired by the water wheels.
Yeah.
Because those have been in use for a long time as well.
Yeah, those were used to also grind grains, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
And then I have in the Netherlands shortly after that, in kind of the 12 to 1500s, they really became like a cultural icon there. They were all over the place, and even now we associate Netherlands with windmills and vice versa.
Yeah.
One thing I have interesting, because it was also from this book by Robert Reiter, which is that one of the common complaints against wind turbines is that they're ugly, that they ruin the landscape.
Yeah.
But he remarks how in the Netherlands, when they were really catching on, they weren't just tucked away or hidden away in the uninhabited areas. They were really, like, towns were built around them. They were kind of he calls it the artistic centerpiece of the village through much of the Netherlands, because they were beautiful and they were considered beautiful, and they would decorate them, and there were social gatherings there. I guess they weren't so industrial and loud as they were today, but it's
they were celebrating the mechanisms that were giving them
energy,
grains,
right?
And energy.
Yeah, it really it kind of symbolizes, I think, from what I understand, like their community's coexistence with the natural world, I guess. That's what I like about renewables, because we're not, I mean, it's in the name, but it's a coexistence. You're not extracting anything. It's not an exploitation of nature or anything like that. It's really it's a lasting relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not abusing any resources here. We're just taking what comes to us.
One thing I wanted to say, because you said they were celebrating their energy, is that energy and electricity isn't the same thing.
Oh yeah, good point.
I mean, I know most people know that, but it's just something you sometimes forget. You're like, well,
especially
they had electricity,
when you're reading statistics.
Yeah. Well, they had energy in 10th century. Yeah, they've had energy for a while.
Yeah, it's just they weren't using electricity to light electric light bulbs. They were using it to help with farming, to help grind corn.
So like to move
transport,
mechanisms.
All those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's that.
I have that windmills thrived in England around this time as well, because the wind was free. It's like an egalitarian power source, meaning that whereas the streams in England for hydro energy was the streams were all owned by the clergy and the gentry and even people who just lived alongside. Yeah,
so you can just stick a turbine in the lake wherever you wanted, because people owned that.
Yeah, you couldn't.
Yeah,
I mean,
but with wind,
whereas wind, everyone kind of owns it, and it's a nice kind of symbolic thing, I think.
I think
for most of the renewables. And then when did you research some history as well?
Yeah, I have a bit of history. Mine started with there's a bit of a conflict with who was the first person to use a windmill to generate energy or electricity.
There you go.
And so mine, I went to 2 sites. One of them was an American site, and one was a just more international site. And the American site that said that it was the first person to generate electricity was
Charles Brush.
I keep wanting to say something Bush, but he wasn't a Bush.
George Bush.
Charles Brush. And that was before the guy I found, based on like the timeline. But we think that
late 1800s,
him and then Paul Lacour.
Yeah, Danish
around the same time, I think the Danish gentleman, Mr. Lacour, he designed the electricity generating windmill, because he was definitely the first person to put a regulator on it, which was to capture it and store it for use 24/7. But then Mr. Brush was the first one to build one. That was in 1886. 1886, and the regulator was put on in 1881. Yeah. 1891.
Great start to the episode.
Yeah. I can't read the numbers in the right order.
The images I saw of Mr. Brush and his large construction really spoke to me about that kind of late 1800s, early 1900s, like American panache for building big structures. You know, it seemed like something you'd see at like the World Fair, like those big expos. Yeah. Because he built it pretty much in his backyard, and it was excessive. It
generated way more electricity than he needed.
It was a huge construction. It was immense. So yeah, wind turbines. We were talking about the wonders of the world last week. Yeah. And we were kind of talking about how it was awesome that in the ancient times they were putting so much energy and so much resources into giving glory to the heavens or to whatever it may be. But And structures today tend to be very egotistic, big skyscrapers and things like this. But if we're going to be building big structures and putting a lot of energy, resources, finances, and planning into building big things, they may as well be wind turbines. That seems as harmless as anything
Yeah,
to
and I
me.
feel like they're equally as there's people will look up to them and they'll say, wow.
Symbols for peace, progress, for equality even.
Yeah.
They're just glorious.
Love windmills. Anyway, back to the history.
Yeah.
So after the 1900s, things just kind of really picked up with windmills.
After the 1800s? Or?
After the 1800s, going into the 1900s, things really picked up. Yeah,
I have, at the end of the 19th century, so around 1900, there were 100,000 windmills across Europe.
That's a lot of windmills.
Yeah, and the book I was reading mentioned that the Middle Ages, it was such a popular technology and it was such a big deal because it was non-human labor, which today we take for granted, but this was the Middle Ages. Before that there were a lot of slave laborers, and the classes are really heavily stratified, I guess. So it was about building a kind of slaveless civilization. Like I said, wind belonged to no one.
Yeah.
And it was just humans weren't doing all the hard physical labor anymore.
Yeah, so very popular. But the thing is, they weren't really making electricity too much yet. That was just kind of the last 10 years of the 19th century.
True.
That they were generating electricity. So a lot of those windmills were for mechanical purposes.
Yep.
Drawing water and so on.
And then I have that in 1911, Edison had made drawings of a windmill that could power homes.
Yeah, so that was kind of like the start of when they started to be a bit more widespread for electrical uses. I have, up until really the 80s, windmills could only produce a few kilowatts of energy, which could power a few homes, but not a ton. But it was increasing every year, really, with just innovation. But then when the 80s hit, NASA was like, we're going to figure this out. And so up until the 80s, a single turbine could only produce single-digit kilowatts of energy. But then this group of NASA scientists, the Wind Division...
Of course. Today we have the Space Force. Back then they had the Wind Division.
Yeah. They found a way to make 3 megawatts of electricity.
Which is a big deal.
Out of one turbine.
That's, 3,000 kilowatts?
Yeah. So basically 3,000 the times anyone could up until that point. Because in 1900 or so, 2,500 windmills could produce 30 megawatts. So this is crazy. Do the math.
Because we don't want to.
Not on the spot, I don't. But yeah, so that's a big innovation. But then since then, there's none in practice but in theory, one turbine, if it was really big and placed in the right location, we have the capacity to, but no one's doing it. And the grids couldn't absorb it. One single turbine.
Enough background. Just say the thing. Say the number.
One turbine could make 40 kilowatts.
Megawatts.
40 megawatts.
Right.
And that's just in 30 years.
You mentioned capacity factor. Let's just go over that for people who are not...
Sorry, there's a lot.
Yeah, so basically every kind of energy production power plant or device, so be it a group of solar panels, be it a nuclear power plant, be it a coal plant, be it a big wind turbine, has a maximum capacity energy yield, which we often refer to it as. So as Alicia was saying there, the biggest ones built today are about 40 megawatts, some of the bigger wind turbines. But in reality, it's never that, for reasons such as...
the height of them, like the actual size.
Yeah.
The air density, which means in colder places, because the air is denser, it turns the windmills more efficiently.
I have a formula for that.
What's your formula?
I don't know it exactly. I don't remember it exactly, but I know that the volume / the density in the equation, which converts wind speed or the wind into how much energy you're going to get out of it, is cubed, meaning that if you increase the
density by a little bit.
The density just a little bit, the energy that you get increases a lot.
Yeah, that's why hydropower, basically the same mechanism as a windmill.
It's the same formula, it's the same mechanism, it's just that water is so much denser, so it's technically much more efficient thing. Yeah. But there are other issues with that we'll get into later.
Yes, we will. And then the third factor into the capacity and how that can be actually translated into the
Yep.
yield is wind speed. So
Yeah.
a windmill could have the capacity for 40 megawatts, but it actually,
For sure.
the
But
wind isn't blowing.
but it's not just renewables that have this big
No,
difference.
it's any
is what I'm trying to say.
energy does.
So coal, for instance, it could be the quality of the coal. It could just be
Mm.
the efficiency of the plant, how much you're losing. Like there's never 100% of your capacity yield.
Yeah.
Nothing ever works to its absolute mechanical potential, basically.
Yeah. I'll tell you the actual average, or like currently the yield that we can have, or any actual built turbine is between 250 watts, which is enough to like power a light bulb, and then 7 megawatts is like the maximum that's actually built. But 40 megawatts is in theory, and like prototypes are being built. Anyway.
Okay, and another thing is that they're never by themselves.
No,
It's we always talk about it as a wind farm.
Yeah.
So the capacity of a wind farm is in the hundreds of megawatts.
Oh,
There's a
yeah,
lot.
for sure. Anyway, that's a lot of facts.
So we had the 1900s. Is that where we left it with the history?
Pretty much, yeah, because we're going to go into the future in a little bit.
Sure. I have some statistics.
Ooh, I like those.
So, worldwide electricity production in 2019,
Okay,
wind accounted for about 4.8% of it.
okay. How much did renewables account for?
I think it was about 16, 15, but that's because a large chunk of that 12, 13%, 14% is hydropower, which is huge.
So why don't we build more hydro plants then?
Well, the reason for that is, let's just talk about rivers because that's where most hydro plants, effective ones are, is simply that most of the world's big rivers that can be dammed and equipped with hydro turbines
Yes.
already are so.
Yeah.
I think we're operating at about 70% of how much we can capture from rivers.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I think so. Don't
Something
quote
like
me,
that.
but it's a big amount of it. So and it's kind of
Mhm.
diminishing returns as well because most of the big rivers are done. So, we just have a lot of
makes
smaller
sense.
rivers left, and they're also very expensive.
Yeah.
And if we want to talk about the ecosystem damaged by hydro,
Yeah.
that kind of whole industry, the problem is that most times we have to dam the river
So that
upstream
just
so
disturbs
that we can
migration
control the flow,
patterns.
and that, as Alicia nicely interrupted, that
Sorry.
disturbs migration patterns and it kind of messes with the ecosystems all around. And also, I think there can be some kind of chemical imbalances that it causes in the water.
Okay.
Sometimes, depending on the practices used in building such dams
That
and
makes
such
sense.
turbines.
Yeah.
And that's just rivers. And for offshore, well, as in tidal power,
Mm-hmm.
you know where the technology
I
is.
do, yeah. So the thing is we like kind of got rivers under control. We are experts at capturing their energy.
Yeah.
But the oceans are too strong. So like we live in an area with the strongest tides in the world.
Famous tides.
Famous tides.
Oh, you won't get tides bigger than this.
Yeah. And so
Knock
they were
you off your
like
feet.
they're like, we solved energy. We're gonna put a turbine here. And they worked on it and put billions of dollars into building this turbine. They pop it in the water and turn it, and then the first current comes and it just tears it to pieces because it's just the tides are so strong.
The ocean's power is just too strong.
Yeah.
I know you didn't see Frozen 2,
I didn't.
but there's a scene where Elsa's trying to cross this raging ocean, and even she can barely handle it.
Elsa
She almost
can't do it.
drowns.
Yeah.
So Elsa can't do it, and we, as of yet, can't do it. The technology's not there. Very expensive, cutting-edge stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually, I mean, I think
I think
the
it'll
oceans
definitely
are
be.
such a huge source of energy. We should be able to
Yeah.
capture some of that. But in the meanwhile,
We think wind is
No.
very great.
wind is kind of the most feasible because we think about solar.
Yeah.
They're incredibly inefficient. You have the number, it's like something like 14%
Yeah.
of
The solar energy is
possible
actually translated.
yeah, so they're very inefficient. They're very expensive. I think
Mhm.
per watt, they are the most expensive form of energy.
Makes
It's
sense.
solar and offshore wind, if I recall. And they can get dusty and covered up, and also the panels themselves, the PV cells, don't really last that long compared to wind turbines
Yeah.
and dams and even something like nuclear power plants.
Yeah, like you build a wind turbine and it really lasts. They're not
It lasts a
crazy
long
expensive
time.
to maintain.
Yeah.
Offshore wind's a different story, but even that, the price is coming down for
Mhm.
maintenance and production. But the good thing with wind is that the price of producing and maintaining is going down with every year, like significantly. So that's great. And if the more windmills that are produced, the more accessible the minerals will be, and it'll just become better. The more you use something, the cheaper it'll be, just basic economics.
Ooh, basic economics.
Yeah.
I have a very fun fact.
Very fun.
The tips of wind turbine blades, the bigger wind turbines, can travel up to 100 miles per hour.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you see them in the distance and you might think, well, how much energy is that really making it go so slow? A lot.
Yeah. Those things are so big. Like you were saying earlier, like a crew of people can fit in the
nacelle.
In the nacelle, yes, obviously.
The nacelle passage.
Yeah. And like when you're looking at them, it looks really small. But I imagine if you were up there or up at the base of one, you'd be like...
Have you ever gone to a wind turbine?
Yes, I have gone to a wind turbine. There's these trails near my house.
Did you touch it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never touched one.
You can climb up to the door. Not the very top,
Whoa.
but there's probably I'm really bad with heights. Probably 10 feet up, there's stairs.
Wow.
And then you can go to the door. Obviously, you can't get in.
I really want to touch one and just feel that energy coursing through my veins.
We're going to bring you to a wind
the
turbine.
Power of the wind.
I can't believe you haven't touched a wind
surging
turbine.
Through me. I never have. Do you think it'll change my life?
Yeah.
I think it will. I think it'll be a really spiritual experience.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're hiking and hiking. They call it a mountain. There's no mountains.
And you don't even have to breathe when you touch it, right? It just breathes through you.
I don't.
The
I'm
wind.
gonna have to give you a little bit of
the wind just travels into your lungs.
But yeah, it's really nice. You hike and then you get up to the wind turbine.
Glowing.
And then it's just you feel renewed, renewable energies.
That's
how it works,
that's
right?
where that word comes from. Some more statistics. So I said that in 2019, global electricity production was 4.8% produced by wind.
Yeah.
Just for reference, in 2017, I don't have... It's kind of hard to find statistics on this because a lot of countries don't like sharing.
They don't.
And then a lot of groups don't really like amassing all the data. I think because countries like to
inflate their
renewable use, so it gets very messy. But from what we know, which is all we can use, in 2017, global electricity, 38% of it was produced by coal, 23% of it was produced by gas, and now 4.8% of it is produced by wind. So not too good, not too bad. It's always on the rise, though.
Yeah.
About 597 gigawatts. That's about the global potential of all the wind turbines.
Yes.
China has about 200 gigawatts of those. USA has about 100 gigawatts of those. For a while, those two were kind of even. It was a bit of an arms race, and now China's really pulled away in the last few years.
Yeah, they have. But the thing with China's wind turbines is they have so much capacity. But, they had that economic issue in 2015 or so. And then, coal, for some reason, was cheaper. So, people weren't using the wind power. But I think they've brought it back up. The wind power is really important there.
Yeah. I mean, China's also not really a democracy, so I think what happened was the government said we're going green, and they were like, okay, and they just started putting up wind turbines at a crazy rate.
Yeah.
For 1 year, it was something like one wind turbine was put up every half an hour in China.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
They're so big.
And they're huge. They're big pieces of industrial engineering.
The good thing with China is they have that metal, which is really crucial to them.
What do you mean, Alicia? Explain.
Well, actually, let's circle back to this because there's a few issues that people have with wind turbines, and the metals used to produce them is my biggest issue, the only one that I'm genuinely concerned about.
Let's get into that first.
Yeah, so we'll go through it. So there's the fact that they will kill birds, noise pollution, materials. What was the other one? I thought there was another one. Aesthetics.
Yeah, destroying the landscape.
Start with aesthetics. How jarred do you feel when you see a wind turbine off in the distance? How angry do you get?
It boils my blood. I hate it, man. It's just obscuring this lovely view I have of the coal plants.
I know, right?
And the coal mines. I'm joking. I think wind turbines are
beautiful.
Gorgeous. Even these very sleek, very modern, very futuristic ones. I like those. I like those kind of rustic ones which we associate with the Netherlands. And I like these new kind of space age ones as well.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. Obviously we can't build our cities directly underneath them. Build them really close to the cities.
Yeah, because they're loud.
And also just like they need to be in high windy places.
Oh yeah, we should talk. Yeah, so that's why offshore is so good, because there's nothing in the way
Yeah.
of it, right? So wind's high.
Yeah.
Because trees, buildings, all these things, decrease the strength of wind by a lot.
Yeah.
So wind placement of the wind farms can be very strategic, can be very good.
But I think it'd be really cool to, in the future, as we're building cities or building new cities, changing locations,
We'll be doing all that.
Yeah, we'll be doing all that.
Next few years.
There'll be, it would be cool to build the wind farms closer to the towns, because right now they're often built really far apart. Then you have to build the lines to transmit the electricity.
True.
Which is, again, invading habitats. But
Well,
if we are building our cities close to where we can build, like making that a factor in where you build something.
And also just them having a real cultural role, because I think now we put our phone charger into the plug socket, or you plug in your toothbrush, and you don't think about where's the energy coming from. It's just such a disconnect. So I think if we, it seems so silly, but we can see a wind turbine in the distance. It's always reminding us, okay, my electricity use comes from there, my energy use comes from there, and we are using wind to do this, because hydro plants for the most part are really hidden. I know a lot of towns like to hide their
coal plants,
or their industrial plants. It's all very hidden, but wind turbines, there's nothing to hide because people are usually proud of them.
Yeah.
It's usually like it's a symbol of progress, peace, technological advancement, sustainability, all those things.
Yeah.
I like them.
And I think the aesthetic nature of wind turbines really counteracts Jevons paradox.
Jevons paradox.
Yes, and that is that when things become more efficient, people will often use more of it.
Yeah,
and that counteracts the efficiency.
Yeah.
But I think the thing with windmills is that even if people, for some reason, we can't use more energy than we currently are.
How can we use more electricity than we already are? As I just said, we're plugging in our toothbrushes, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
We couldn't use more electricity than we already are.
No. And the thing is, if the grid is 100% clean, and for some reason we did, it'd be fine. But I think electricity use would go down if it was all renewable, just because people would be more aware of it. It would be a big project.
Well, we should be making a push for that at the same time as we're cleaning up the grid, because a penny saved is a penny earned, and a gram of electricity saved is just as good as cleaning up the grid a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, turn off your lights, switch your light bulbs to more renewable ones, or to more efficient ones, sorry.
Yeah.
But electricity use, energy use isn't going to go down that much, because we've built a society where it needs to be at least a baseline so you can be a productive member of the society.
Yeah.
We need electricity, we need energy, so it's just the fact of changing where we get it from for the most part.
Yeah, but that's why I just thought we should mention that paradox, because I feel like someone listening would be like, they're not thinking about all these different issues. We've thought about every issue.
Trust us, we're thinking about Jevons paradox all the time.
Yeah, but we're not going to get into too many of the contradictions or details of wind energy.
I have another statistics.
Oh.
In 2018, 14% of the EU's electricity consumption came from wind power.
Okay.
Which is pretty good. Yeah. Much higher than that of the Earth. About 3 times higher than that of global. Mm-hmm. And one specific country, Denmark, 40% of its electricity came from wind power.
Very cool.
Which is very good.
Yeah, 10 times more. Neato.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, Quebec and Canada, 100% hydro, and they even sell it to Maine and neighboring countries, which is not countries, neighboring provinces.
So it can be, it's a lot about location still, but the thing with wind is that I remember reading this, I know it's true, if you strategically really maximize a few areas of the world, you could provide for it for the whole world's electricity consumption easily. And that's not even really getting into offshore or far offshore. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of doing this politically, financially, because wind turbines are kind of expensive to put up. Mm-hmm. So initially it's more expensive than, we could just keep using natural gas or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and there's the opposition of people saying, they're ugly. Well, we just debunked that. Anyway, what's the next opposition to wind turbines? Let me debunk that. Cats kill more birds by tenfold than wind turbines do.
And no one's talking about banning cats. No one's saying we should think carefully about getting cats because of all the birds.
No
one
not
cares
thinking
about birds.
That.
Yeah, that's another thing. Is that
no one cares about birds.
And another thing.
Yes, they do.
And another thing. The people who are often, from my experience, anecdotal, The people who are often making this argument that we shouldn't put up wind turbines because think of the poor birds are usually not great environmentalists.
They're not saying, oh, we need to really watch about habitat loss.
Yeah, they usually don't care if it's whatever coal's doing or whatever it may be. It's just, I think they're looking for a reason to dislike
Bit of a
renewables.
not in my backyard syndrome, saying, well, it's going to kill the birds. It's not a good choice.
A bit of a what?
Not in my backyard syndrome.
Oh, you mean NIMBY?
NIMBY, yes. So they're saying, well, these are going to be ugly. They're going to be killing all of the birds. They're going to be noisy is the other one.
Yeah.
And it's like, pretty much every windmill has been put up recently. It's been put somewhere far enough away that it isn't intruding on anyone's land, like anyone's property that they live on. And so like it's not making a lot of noise. And they've been placed strategically as to not disturb bird habitats.
Yeah.
So they're just like placed in locations that birds don't like. That's a part of getting a permit to put up a windmill, I believe.
I don't want to downplay those people. Like, I'm sure there are people who have had legitimate terrible experiences because a wind turbine's been built across from their house and it's like destroyed their life because it's so loud. I'm sure that's happened.
Oh yeah.
But that's more to do with, that's not an innate problem with wind turbines. That's the planning, that's the permits, that's the kind of thoughtless construction. But I definitely feel for those people.
No, I agree. And it's the same with like for years, all of the dirty industries have been placed often in areas that are lower economic.
Yeah.
Like regions, and that's not fair.
Yeah,
but that's just more of a planning issue and a classism issue, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah. But I don't think the noise is a big issue because they can just be planned
Stay
better.
away from it. And you said you went right underneath one and it was loud.
It wasn't that loud though.
Okay.
Like that's the thing. I was like I'm not gonna be able to hear. Like it's gonna suck.
It's gonna deafen me.
But it's just like a hum.
Mm.
Yeah, like it's not crazy.
And a lot of power plants, fossil fuel plants already have a hum.
Yeah.
I know which kind of hum I prefer.
Yeah, me too.
The clean one.
Yeah, and I'd rather not be.
Clean hum.
Yep. It's better than pollution. It is.
Okay.
I'd rather noise pollution over air pollution.
Hot take over here.
Sorry. I know noise pollution disturbs habitats, but
I'm
at
going to
least...
say it. I really don't like the term noise pollution. Just call it noise. That's all it means, right?
Yeah.
Is that all it means?
Yeah. I assume it's noise that's like disturbing.
Yeah, but the thing with pollution, when I hear pollution, I think something is polluting the water or the air and it's staying there.
Yeah.
Noise goes away. And it's the same when people say light pollution. Just call it light. That's all it is, right?
Yeah.
This is my Aaron's rant for the day, episode 15.
Anyway.
But light pollution is in a city when people say the stars are obscured because there's light in the night sky, right?
Yeah.
And it's terrible, but just call it light. It's not light pollution, it's just light.
Because that kind of downplays the
Real
other pollutions
pollution.
which cause...
They're listing the problems. You've got air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution. No.
It's like, no.
Don't group those things.
No. Anyway.
Moving on.
So those are the issues that we kind of debunk. But then we get to an issue that I kind of wanted to bring up was the mining of the minerals that are used to produce renewables. We're going to focus on wind because that's what today is about. And so to produce a wind turbine, the tower and the blades are made out of, for the most part, this metal called neodymium. And that is almost exclusively found in China. There's some in Australia and some in Western Africa that is mined, but all of the stuff that is mined outside of China goes to China for processing. So that's a bit of a bottleneck, I guess.
A bit of a geopolitical dependency even.
Yes. So that's one of the minerals. Copper is mined all over the place. I think mining that is a bit environmentally degrading, as is any mining though. But every report I read, because I wanted to read up to make sure I wasn't promoting wind, it actually somehow has more of an environmental impact than coal. It doesn't. It's far, far better than any fossil fuel being burned.
And the thing is, we're already mining copper for everything else.
Yeah.
We're already mining lithium for everything else, because you didn't list that, but that's involved as well,
No, I'm getting to the batteries.
Okay, sorry.
Getting to the batteries. So lithium and cobalt are two things that are in pretty much every battery. They're in your phone. They're in your laptop. Who knows where else
in your toothbrush.
They probably are in your toothbrush. So they're what you use to make rechargeable batteries. And those are mined. Lithium is mined in Argentina and
South America?
South America, but like
Okay.
the lower part of South America, so
Right.
western South America. Um,
Southern?
southern.
What are you on about? You're missing up the 1800s and the 1900s. Now you're forgetting you never eat shredded wheat. Compass points.
I don't eat wheat. Oh my. Anyway, lithium is like just mined just for everything. But cobalt is pretty much exclusively mined in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it's one of the conflict minerals. So that means it's produced in a very conflict-ridden zone, often using child labor, exploiting people to mine it. So that's like one major issue with renewable energies, because you need this mineral to make the batteries. But the good thing is that a lot of companies are working on making batteries that don't require these things that are produced in conflict zones, and rather working on more ethically sourced minerals to make batteries with. And I think the more windmills and renewables that we have demand for, the more places will be uncovered and invested in for mining in different locations.
Well said.
And the environmental impacts of that mining is far less than the impacts of coal.
And another thing with renewables, or rather with wind turbines, is that unlike coal or whatever else, other fossil fuel you're mining, once you build a wind turbine, it stays built and you don't have to keep mining it. I mean, there will be a lot that needs to be built for some kind of energy generation paradigm shift, but it won't need to be a continuous reliance. And also, you mentioned earlier that most of those minerals are very easily recycled.
They can be recycled, yeah. It's like if a wind turbine breaks down, it's not like you have to throw everything out. You can reuse the metals to make a new wind turbine that works.
Yeah.
Or just fix it. Yeah.
Wind turbine.
Yes. So that's the thing. That'd be the biggest opposition that I would have maybe even a hard time counteracting. Someone was talking about the ethics of producing these types of things, but I don't hear anyone being like, you shouldn't buy a phone because there's cobalt in it.
You easily counteracted it.
Yeah, I guess. But I think we need to really fight to get these minerals to stop, or get these countries to stop exploiting their workers.
Of course.
Yeah. Anyway.
Do we have any closing statements, or was there anything else you wanted to mention?
I think that was all I really had to mention. Mentioned Jevon's paradox. Jevon's.
So we did some scientific outlining. We mentioned, or we kind of described briefly the internal architecture of a wind turbine. We mentioned the historical movement which has brought us to this point today, and some of the current statistics as to where and how much of it is being generated. Yeah, do you have any closing thoughts, closing statements?
I think wind turbines can be really a symbol of the future.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, because the next few decades will be very formative in human history. They'll be looked back upon in one of two ways, either as the era of the wind turbines and the renewables, and people look back at an image of a wind turbine and say, that's so beautiful, romanticize about it even. But that's where human civilization is going, is towards a renewable future.
Yes, speak it into existence, baby.
Yes.
Or they'll look back on it as the time where the rest of us let these money-grabbing, fossil fuel addicted politicians and CEOs have their way with the planet. We cannot allow this. We cannot.
It's because if we do allow it, then people are going to suffer. It's like, that's my motivation. People are going to suffer. The environment's going to be degraded beyond
belief,
yeah. And the environment will renew itself, but we might not be a part of it.
Well, I mean, society is just going to crumble if we don't move away from fossil fuels now.
Anyway, before we get too passionate...
no, I want to talk more about this.
Oh.
These things, beautiful, spinning... Three-bladed monoliths should absolutely be a huge part of our society.
Yes.
We should be bringing the kids out of elementary school on a field trip on March 15th on a sunny spring day, and they say, where are we going? And we point out of the window and we just see them spinning.
Like, imagine how hyped that'd be to see your first windmill if you saw them on the horizon.
They just climb the hill and they each go up and touch them. I don't know why I have a thing about touching them, but I just really feel like you could feel a transfer of all this human knowledge. You could feel the whole history of it. You could feel Hero of Alexandria creating that small windmill that provided power to play his organ, you would just hear those bing, bing, boom, those little organ notes traveling 2,000 years through time to reach you. The whole of human history has hinged on these whoosh, 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 these turbines. We need them. Please, politicians, this is my plea. Build more of these wind turbines. Because I don't know what I might just become one. I need them.
We need them.
I can just see it. Some, utopian future where the wind turbines, they're just a symbol
Of peace.
of peace,
Hope.
prosperity.
Progress.
And you know what? We could brand on each one just right at the bottom.
What could we write?
At the _environmental, which is our Instagram handle.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram for some of the pictures I've taken of windmills. Might be up there this week. Some cool graphics and
Cool graphics and behind the scenes, very neat scientific videos we've been posting.
Yes. It's a fun time. It's inspiration for you to get off Instagram often. You see a picture of nature, but we're saying in the caption, please stop looking at this. Go touch a tree yourself. Go touch a windmill this week. If you can.
That's a homework for you.
Yeah.
Touch
Report
a windmill.
back to us. Send us a picture of you touching a windmill, and I will probably print it off and frame it. Anyway,
Yes.
so you can find us on Instagram at _environmental.
New episodes every Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Next week, we're jumping straight from wind turbines into the next logical discussion, which is the Oscars.
Obviously, two cultural pillars, windmills.
Windmills and film.
Yeah.
Those just go hand in hand. Anyway, thanks for listening. Have a great
Day.